What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Comic Breakdown. Today we're covering another great comic, which is X-Men Age of Revelation Omega Kids, issue number 2. And this has been a really interesting story. Kid Omega has essentially created his own CIA, his own spy network. He does this with the Omega Kids, mutants with telepathic abilities being trained up to be pretty much operatives. But what Quentin has been unaware of, these kids are manipulating him. These kids are much more sinister than you would believe. Desensitized through years of being trained up. These guys are like little living nuclear weapons. So when we pick up in the secret place, this is their little astral plane hideout. They really come here for a kind of reprieve, just to be teenagers and get away from everything. So when they hear Quentin Quire calling from them, calling for the Omega Kids, they're annoyed. So much so that one of them even says, "I wish that he would leave us alone." And Bailey, the most evil one of all of them, straight up's like, "I can make him leave us alone." But the others, they say, "No, let's go find out what he wants." When we pick up in the Revelation territories just outside of downtown Philadelphia, this is where they begin their field work. They go house to house and they start scanning the brains of every individual. They search for any sign of dissent. They search for anybody that might be a traitor, might be a rebel. I mean, even when they come up to an old lady who's been giving food to somebody outside the territory, her grandson at that, just to be safe, they erase any memory of her grandson. While there's not necessarily a need to kill the old lady, this does fall under their rules of dissent. So as punishment, she's just simply never gonna remember her grandson, ever again. But they continue on doing their scans, and as they get a little bit further on, this is when they find somebody that they can't read, having some kind of psychic shield up or something that they can't understand. This is when we see the huge blast, a fiery explosion, the bursting out of the Phoenix. Now, at this point, Quentin Quire, he's telling the kids, like, don't. Trying to tell them to stop, trying to tell them to back off, but they're not listening. Thinking that they might be able to do something, they try to go and see if they can bring down the shields. As a group, they try to concentrate telepathic attacks on the frontal lobe. The kids put up a barrier to keep Quentin out. And as they attack and attack and attack, this is when Quentin loses it, forcing these kids back into their bodies. And while at first they're rather upset that they got pushed back into themselves, he tells them that you guys need to listen, that all of you are about to get yourselves disintegrated. The truth is, these kids are just proving that they're not ready. They assess that as an insurgent, and that person wasn't an insurgent. Telling them to go back home, he goes inside to talk to the individual they attacked, and that individual is none other than Rachel Summers. Now, at first, Quentin's, he apologizes, though she says she simply got the wind knocked out of her and she wasn't expecting a bunch of kids to attack her on a psychic level. It really just threw her off guard. This is when he goes on to further explain the Omega Kids, the tiny covert psychic task force. Now, Rachel's already a little ticked off, and so when Quentin goes on to really invite her to be part of this task force, she's like, "There's no way in hell I'm doing that. I'm not gonna hunt my own people down in the streets like dogs." She's had enough of that for one dystopian future. She's good on doing it again. She's good on seeing it again. But more than that, she's telling him that you need to be careful with these kids. Because while they're tough, they're also impressionable. Their brains are still developing. Maybe it's not the best idea to teach these kids that are psychic warheads how to hunt and kill other mutants like it's a freaking game. Like, maybe that's a bad idea. But with Rachel taking off, this is when Bailey comes to him. And I also want to make note the purple kind of psychic haze that begins to form as Rachel Summers leaves. With the arrival of Bailey, this is gonna matter. Now, Bailey shows up and she's like, "We found something." What they found is an entire terrorist cell, rebels right underneath their nose. Now, Bailey and all of them, they say that they've been scanning for rebels this whole time, but they overlook this because Bailey's mom is in the ranks. And of course, seeing a cell of this size, Quentin's like, "I gotta take this up the ladder. I gotta take this directly to Revelation." And so when he gets to him, Revelation says that this pretty much lines up with the information that they have. With all the insurgent activity that they've been tracking, the attempts on his life, everything becoming more frequent, more professional. They're learning, they're organizing. But Quentin Quire really is having a hard time understanding these rebels. The woman that they had neutralized, their team had neutralized on Monday, the sniper in her cell, they all had loved ones. Those loved ones had been babbled. These people seem to have no reason. They seem to just be attacking. And with so many people, Quentin's thinking maybe this is mind control. Maybe somebody with the power of suggestion. How do this many mutants go down the wrong path? Revelation changing the subject, asking how the kids are, and Quentin says, the kids are weird. They're a lot weird, but I think that they're good kids. That's also why he would rather not use them to execute all of these people. But as Quentin's looking around, this is when he sees that purple glitch. He looks around and he sees it again. Now, he doesn't think anything of it in the moment. Then we are directly cut to a scene where we have Quentin Quire in that room that Rachel was just in. But Quentin finds himself surrounded by rebels. Then we hop over to the kids in the astral plane, and the kid's saying that he's gonna be so mad when he finds out that they've been running him through simulation. It's all been a psychic projection, but how much of it has been a psychic projection? That's the big question. The kid's going on to further say that he's gonna realize they haven't been running scans, though Bailey will say that she did. She set up a relay just like Quentin had talked about, though he suggested against the relays. He suggested against doing mass examination of people's minds. But Bailey's been doing this anyway. She's been scanning the whole territory, almost like it's on autopilot. So if any of the enemies even have a negative thought about Revelation, she has it switch off their brain. The problem with this is that people have negative thoughts all the freaking time. The other kids recognizing that this means every mutant that has been scanned by Bailey potentially could be shutting off all of their brains for simply having a negative thought of Revelation. In Bailey's mind, this is the enemy, and that is where this issue will end. Alright, so when it comes to stories like this, it's hard to tell what is real and what is fabricated. What is just a psychic projection? Is the whole story a psychic projection, or is it just bits and pieces? Now, based off of the context of this story, in the beginning we see the kids get up, and at first they're unwillingly helping him out. But it wasn't until that moment that he pushed them out, yelled at them, and Bailey got mad. She said, "That's not very nice." So I think it might be fair to assume that the conversation with Rachel was actually real, and that after she left the room, Bailey approached him, showed him everything going on. We saw all the purple haze in the room right as Bailey came in with this grand new find of hers. And based off of seeing the glitches in the system only when he was with Revelation, I think that we can deduce that from the moment Rachel Summers walked out the door, they put him into a psychic projection, a simulation, and then they went into their little astral plane to hang out and play. Bailey running her scans, they're not really focused on any danger, any rebels, any bad guys. So it's possible that they just left him there, and when he wakes up, he's gonna be mad because he's gonna realize what they've been doing. Like they suggested, he's gonna wake up and be mad. But they are unaware that the rebels found him. That is my current running theory. The only other theory I might have is that every single bit of it, all of it, is all just a simulation, all a psychic projection, and eventually he's gonna break out, and it might put us in a whole different place. But based on the context of the conversation, the way these things were handled, the way the kids talk to one another, it seems like they don't want to keep him in a full psychic projection all the time because he still has to deal with Revelation and all that other stuff. The kids honestly just want to be left alone. So if they can be left alone for as long as possible, that's the ultimate goal. They don't want Revelation coming and snooping around and poking his head in. You rather just answer to one boss. They may not like Kid Omega or Quentin Quire, but it's the devil you know. They can handle him. They can keep him in check. They can throw him into a psychic projection whenever he becomes annoying. My bigger question is, how did Quentin Quire get in such a state that he has kids pretty much ruling over his mind? Is it because Revelation babbled him? Or are these kids simply powerful enough? Like Rachel said, psychic warheads walking around with no morality, no humanity, simply turning off people's brains like it's nothing, desensitizing them to murder. What monsters you could create. But let me know your thoughts. Let me know your theories. If you want to get caught up on everything that has been going on with this series, go ahead, check out the link in my description as well as the top of this video. It's going to get you completely caught up on everything that has been going on with this series. If you would like to support the channel, you can always do so by joining the channel membership. This is a lot like Patreon. Having a bunch of different tiers really does help out the channel a lot. But if you can't do that, do me the favor of subscribing to the channel, liking this video, hitting that notification bell, and with that being said, until the next breakdown.